Don't forget to like and subscribe to Jolie Knots Crochet. Share with your friends. Hit that little notification bell so you can get notified when new patterns release. All our videos are available in left and right-handed tutorials. Hi everyone, welcome back to Jolie Knots Crochet. I'm Crystal, and today we are going to be making this crossbody boho everyday bag. This is just a crossbody bag. You can make the length in the arms shorter if you like for a different kind of fit. It does not have to be a crossbody. The sizing on these two here are just slightly different, but I'm going to teach you how to customize it if you want it to be larger and if you want it to be taller. You will also have the option to add a button and make a chain on the other side to fasten it closed if you like. Now you do have two options in the yarns that you are going to be using for this project. Okay, so for both of these yarns, I did use a 5mm hook. This one here is with a bulky 5 weight. It is a single stranded bag, and I used a self color changing yarn. This is a variegated yarn in a different colorway, but it's the same one I used for this. I used 2 cakes of this, just under 2 cakes. This is a bulky 5 weight yarn, and each cake is 150 grams, 180 meters, so about 195 yards or so, right around there. It is a 50% acrylic and a 50% polyamide. Like I said, I did use just under 2 cakes of this, and I did make this a tad smaller. So you want to make sure that if you go a larger size, you don't go too large if you don't have the amount of yarn that might be necessary. Now for this one here that I added the button to, I used 2 strands held together. I used the Lion brand Pound of Love yarn in taupe. The color is taupe. It is a 100% acrylic yarn, and the recommended hook size for this one is a 6mm. I do consider this more of a lighter 3-weight yarn. And then the second strand, the one that has the color change in it, was the Red Heart Gemstone, and this color is Red Topaz. It's considered a bulky 5-weight yarn, but I would definitely disagree with that. I would consider it more of a 4-weight yarn. Not even really that much of heavy 4-weight yarn. I've used several 4-weight yarns that were a lot heavier than this. The differences in these yarns, so this is the bulky 5-weight yarn. It's more like roped together. It's like spun differently. It doesn't have a huge pull to it, and it's a pretty sturdy in the width, so it doesn't get much smaller when you pull it. Now these two are the yarns that I used for this bag. This is the bulky 5-weight. It looks fluffy, but it's not really. I mean, it just really thins out once it's used and squished up. So both of these yarns together, I equated with this yarn. And I used a 5mm hook for both of it. Now the idea in this bag is to use a smaller hook size. If you're using double-stranded and you really need to go up to a 5.5mm hook, then go ahead and do that. We just don't want our work to, we want it to be really durable. We don't want it to stretch too much and pull in different direction. We are not lining this bag, so we don't want to have a bunch of holes on the inside for our pens or keys or anything like that to be poking out the side of it. Okay, so both of these are pretty tight. This one is actually a little bit looser than this one because it's more single-stranded, where this one was double-stranded. So other than the yarn and your yarn choice and making the right hook choice, you will need a button if you choose to put a button on your bag, and you will also need 4 stitch markers. Those stitch markers are going to be used where our increases are in the bottom, and also when we start working back and forth for the shoulder strap. Okay? Now go ahead and pick your yarn out. The yarn that I am going to be using for this tutorial, I picked these up on clearance at Hobby Lobby. You don't need to use the same yarns I'm using. I just gave you 2 examples of 3 different yarns, and here is what I'm going to use for my next bag. I am going to use it double-stranded. This I consider an extremely thin 4-weight or even a 3-weight yarn. It's categorized as a 4-weight, but it's pretty thin in my opinion. This is Yarn Bee's Sweet Divinity. These balls come in 243 yards, 3.5 ounces. I'm gonna need about 375 yards of each color. 375 to approximately 400 yards of each one. Now, if you're using the bulky 5-weight one, you're only going to need that one 375 to 400. You're not going to have the 2 strands. But this one I'm double stranding, so I'm going to use 2 cakes of each, at least approximately. That's what I think. This one here is Yarn Bee's Aurora Borealis. It is also 3.5 ounces, but it's 169 yards. So it's a really, really big difference for this one. They're the same weight, but this one has 243 yards and this one has 169 yards. So how they categorize them both as 4-weight yarns, I don't really know. I am going to be using a 5mm hook to hold these 2 strands together and work my bag that way. So you don't have to choose a color change yarn. You don't even have to choose 2 separate colors. You could just do 2 strands of the same color if you like, or you could, change it throughout and ombre it. I do plan on eventually making one that is like a scrappy boho bag. So that would be really nice also. Maybe I'll get one done and show you guys that when it's completed as well. Okay, so go ahead and grab your hook. I am going to take my 5mm hook. I'm going to find the center of this yarn somewhere, hopefully. There we go. All right, I've got that. Okay, so taking both of your strands of yarn, you're going to go ahead and create a slip knot. And now what I'm going to do is chain 35. Now your chain of 35, one stretch, should be approximately 10 to 11 inches. Now here is the first part of customizing your bag. If you want a bag that is wider, you will chain more. Keep in mind we are going to be having a couple of increase rows on each side, so your bag is going to grow by about 2 to 3 inches total. So about 1 inch to 1.5 inches on each side is what it will grow. If you want your bag a little bit shorter or thinner, less narrow, then you will do less than 35 stitches. So I've got my 35 and I'm going to stick with my 35. I've also got my stitch markers here. So I'm going to be using 4 stitch markers. Into the second chain from my hook, I'm going to place 3 half double crochets. 1, 2, 3. Into my first half double crochet and into my last half double crochet, I'm going to place a stitch marker. This is where we're going to be putting our increases between here. And now I'm going to half double crochet into each chain space all the way down to the other side. Okay, so now that I've reached the end of my chain, I have 1 chain left, and into that chain I'm going to put 3 half double crochets all into the last chain. I'm going to take my stitch markers, and into the first of that 3 half double crochets I'm going to place a stitch marker, and then also into my third one. Now working back down the other side, I'm also going to work over my tail. I'm going to place a half double crochet into every chain space all the way back, just opposite the side of what we've already worked. Okay, so now that I have made it to the end here, this one is my last chain space before I reach the end. Now we're going to be working in continuous rounds, so we're not going to be joining in anywhere. We're not going to be joining to seal. We're not going to be sewing up until we get our arm straps done. So this stitch marker right here is representing the first stitch where our increases are in the first round. So you can go ahead and take this stitch marker out, and in that stitch you're going to place 2 half double crochets. 1, 2. Into the first half double crochet that you just made, we will replace our stitch marker right back into that first stitch. Now we'll do 2 half double crochets into the next stitch. This is where we're increasing to turn our corners. And then into the last stitch with the stitch marker, we will put 2 more half double crochets. And then we will replace our stitch marker again into that last stitch. Okay, so now you are going to half double crochet all the way back down to the end until you get to your first stitch marker over here, and I'll meet you back over here. Okay, I've reached the end where the stitch markers are. I'm going to remove my stitch marker, place my 2 half double crochets. The first half double crochet I made will now have my stitch marker. Work my next 2 half double crochets in that middle stitch, and 2 in the next one where the stitch marker is. So I'll take that stitch marker out, work my 2 half double crochets, and in the last half double crochet that I just created, that's where I'll place my stitch marker back. Now I am going to half double crochet all the way down to the end of the round, where I started over here. So I'll do that and then I'll meet you back over here. Okay, here I am. I just made it to the other side where my first stitch marker is. Now, since this is our third row of increasing, when you remove your stitch markers, we're not going to need them again until we start working on our straps. So starting from your first stitch marker all the way to the last stitch marker, we're putting 2 half double crochets into each stitch. Remove your stitch marker. My last 2 half double crochets are going in, and then I'm going to half double crochet all the way down the side again until I get to the stitch markers over here. Okay, I reached the other end where my stitch markers were, and again, because this is our 3rd row where our increases are, we are not going to be needing our stitch markers after this one. So we're putting 2 half double crochets into every stitch around our bend until we get to our next stitch marker. And into the same space where our last stitch marker was. And now you're going to not need to worry about the start and the stop of any of the rows. You are just going to continue working around and around and around until you get to about 30 or 35 rows total from the top, or at the depth that you would like your bag to be. So as you continue working, this is the inside and this is the outside, it will curve up and it'll start to form the bag, and you'll just be going around and around. So let me get a few more rows in on this one so you can see that curve and how it's supposed to look. It'll be kind of like this on the inside out. Just like that. Okay? Remember, when we get back down to the other side, we are not increasing anymore. We took out our stitch markers and we're just putting 1 half double crochet into every stitch around. No increases, no decreases. Okay, so I have just completed the body of my bag. It's just under 12 inches. So I had enough yarn to go up a little bit higher than in my last ones. So you can decide, you want to leave about maybe 60 to 65 grams of yarn for each strand that you have to do the band, your straps, okay? So the next thing we're gonna do is we're just gonna lay this flat, and how we are going to be working our straps in the beginning is we're starting them inside here. Now this one I have a little bit more than what I'm going to teach you, but feel free to customize it and add more. I think I started with 26 stitches here, but I wanted them to be a little bit thinner, so we're going to go with 22. And like I said, just feel free to customize it if you have something particular that you want. So 22 stitches, we're going to count from the ends here, 11 going in on each side. I'm going to put it in my 12th one, so that way I can just work directly into the stitch. And now I'm going to count out 22 to go around, and it should be right around this same part. So into my 23rd stitch, I'm going to place my stitch marker. And I'm going to do the same thing for this side. Okay, so you should still have your yarn attached to this, and we're gonna work this all pretty much in one piece. So the only thing we're really gonna sew together are our straps. So this is gonna count here for the first part of your first band, even though there's not like a stoppage here. But when we stop here and we work back the next way, it's going to technically be counted as 2. So our row 1 for our straps, we're going to want 22 stitches, and then we're going to decrease by 2 stitches per row. So I'm going to continue my half double crochets until right up to my stitch marker. And like I said, since this one is going to be counting as our first row, we are just going to count this as 22 stitches, even though we don't have a proper edge for the other one. But this is where we'll stop to turn our work. So you're just going to chain 1, and now we're working back and forth. So since that one was counted as my first one and I wanted 22 stitches, what I'm going to do now is make sure that I stop with 20 stitches. So we're decreasing by 2 stitches per row. I've chained 1. I'm skipping my first stitch. Half double crocheting into the second.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19,
and 20. Chain 1, turn your work again. Now we're going to work back towards the end here. And this is going to be your repeat row. So your first 2 rows were a little bit different because we were working in rounds and we didn't technically have a full start before we had our stop. And now what we're going to do, because we just had 20, now we're going to do 18 for our next one. So skipping your first stitch and into your next stitch, that's going to be your first half double crochet. So 1, 2,
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16,
17, and 18. Now you should have 1 stitch left. After your 18th stitch, you do have 1 stitch left, but we're just going to leave that blank. When we add our border, it's going to straighten it out nicely, so don't worry about that little bump there, okay? Chain 1, turn your work back the other way. Since we just did 18, we're going to repeat that row. So we're going to skip the first stitch, working into the second, and since we had 18 in the last one, we're going to work 16 across in this one. So you're going to repeat this row until you have 6 stitches total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15,
and 16. And then my next row will be 14. So just working that same exact row until you have 6 stitches left, and I will meet you back. We're going to work just a small portion of the band, and then I'm going to show you how to attach and basically work the same thing here, but we're actually going to have those full rows. Alright, so let me finish working this out to where I need it to get to my 6 stitches across. We're decreasing again by 2 per row. Okay, so I've worked my strap until I have just 6 stitches across. And now I'm not going to increase and I'm not going to decrease. I'm going to chain 1, half double crochet across 6 times. That last one is going to be a little bit tricky to find, but just make sure you have 6. Chain 1, turn your work. Remember, we're not increasing and we're not decreasing in these strap rows, so we should have 6 double crochets across no matter what. And I'm just going to work a couple of these out, and then we're going to get started on the other side, and we'll just use this part as measurements. Okay, so now I've got a couple of my 6 stitch rows, and what I'm going to do is just go ahead and cut my yarn. I want to leave maybe about 8 or 10 inches or so, because this is what I'm going to use to sew up over here. When we create our neck strap and we bring it over, this is the yarn we'll use to whip stitch it all together. So make sure you leave a tail long enough for that, okay? So now over on this side, we're not going to need these stitch markers here anymore, so you can take those out, get them out of your way. Now working over on this side, I am going to, now you can attach your yarn and chain 1. I'm just going to start with a standing half double crochet. And how I'm going to do that is I'm just going to hold this so my yarn doesn't flip. Yarn over, go into that first stitch, and then pull up. That's my first half double crochet. Now I'm going to work over my tails so that I don't have to weave those in later. So this is the first one, and what might be easy for you so that you know it's the first one is that you can move your stitch marker up. Now remember, when we come back, we're not even going to be working into that stitch, but at least you know that's where the first stitch is. So there's 1, and I'm going to do 22 across total, so I need 21 more. Okay, here's my 22nd half double crochet, moving my stitch marker, chaining 1, and now I'm going to repeat my decrease rows. So my decrease rows, remember, is you're skipping the first stitch, half double crocheting into the second. This row I'm going to have 22 stitches going down, and I'm going to leave my last stitch blank. Okay, that is my last stitch there. I did not work into the first stitch of the row. Chain 1, turn your work, and repeat that row until you have 6 stitches across. So I'm going to work mine out until I have 6 stitches across, and then I am going to continue my band with 6 stitches all the way around. And if you're looking to do a crossbody bag, approximately 90 rows, but your band will be long enough that you can kind of just hold it there, put it across your shoulder, and see to make sure that it's the length that you want. So you're going to want to also give it a little bit of a tug because it will stretch out. So that way you have the right length and it's not The first one that I made, I didn't give it that tug. I gave like the length that I wanted, and then it stretched to be way too long, and I had to go back in and like frog some of it out. So I'm gonna work my strap continuing. When I get to my 6 stitches across, I'm gonna continue that up to approximately 90 rows, and then I'm going to meet you back here so I can show you how to whip stitch the band, the strap together, and then show you how we're gonna do the border going all the way around to clean it up nice and smooth, okay? All right, I'm gonna do that, you do yours, and I'll see you. Okay, so here I am. I have just completed my band. I myself have 90 rows total. That is including this part here. So I'm 5'7", and I like mine a little bit longer, so really it's just gonna be dependent on how you like yours. So what we're gonna do now is we are going to take a tapestry needle, and we're gonna take this end here that we left from the band, the first part of the armband, or the strap, making sure that I'm not twisting up my band, making sure that my strap is not twisted from the other side. I'm gonna hold both of my straps together, and I'm just gonna go through the top of the stitch here, and then through the top of the first stitch on the other side. The next one, we're just going through the top of the stitch. And we really only have 2 across. Okay, and here's my last one. And once that pulls down this way, you won't even really be able to tell that there is a seam there. So I'm just gonna tie this a couple of times. Once I put my tie in there, I'm not gonna snip this off because I'm actually going to attach this to my yarn when I do this side of the band. So let me show you how we're gonna work our band here. Now you should still have your yarn attached, and I am going to work into the side, or exactly like the side of every half double crochet row. And so it's easier for me. What I'm going to do is actually find where my stitch was, like where my stitch begins. Okay, so this will be my first one, and we're single crocheting all the way around. We're not doing half double crochets. My next stitch is here, and that's all you're going to do, is you're just going to continue to work down the side of every single row. 1 single crochet into the side of every half double crochet row. Now when we reach our increases, we're gonna put one in the side of every row, but where we have that chain 1 space, we're gonna also add one there. So I've got my chain 1 space, the top of the stitch, the top of the next stitch, my chain 1 space again. The top of the next stitch, the top of the next stitch, And I've got my chain 1 space again. Next stitch, next stitch, my chain 1 space, next stitch, and that's the last, this is the top of this first row. So this stitch here in the body is worked into, so I'm going to go straight over here into the next stitch, and I'm going to put a single crochet. So now I'm going to work down this side. Now if you are going to be adding a button is optional, but if you are adding a button, what you're going to do is find your middle 3 stitches. So I'm going to be counting in from the sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Here's my middle. I'm going to place a stitch marker there. I'm going to continue working with my single crochets down. And now what I'm going to do is the stitch before and the stitch after, I'm going to leave those unworked. I'm going to chain 15. And now I'm going to skip those 3 stitches, come over to the next stitch, and continue working my single crochets. So what this is going to do is this is going to create our strap that when you add the button on the other side, it's just going to go over the button and it's going to help to keep your bag closed. Okay, so I'm going to work my single crochets all the way up the side and around back to where I started, slip stitching to join, and then doing the same exact thing on the other side. And remember, we have 1 single crochet into the side of every row, but in our decrease, when we have our strap right here where we're decreasing, we'll add a single crochet where that chain 1 space is. So I'm working back up the side here. I'm going to put 1 into the top of the row here where my first row is, 1 into the top of the row. Here's my next row. I'm going to go 1 into the top of the row. And then here is my chain 1 space. That's where I'll add that extra single crochet into the top of the row, into the top of the next row, my 1 single crochet space, my chain space, I'm adding a single crochet, top of the row, top of the row, into the chain 1, top of the row, top of the row, into the chain 1. And now we're done with our decreases here. So now I'm just going to be working into the top of every row, going all the way back up and around the band. Now what you should notice is that it looks like it's kind of pulling and making your band look a little bit wonky. And all you're going to do really is give that a nice tug to let your stitches relax, and then it'll flatten up really nicely. Okay, so I am going to work my way around the rest of my strap. So I'm gonna go all the way up my strap, coming back down my strap. I'm gonna slip stitch to where I started. I'm gonna turn it over and I'm gonna join my yarn here. And then I'm gonna do the same thing going around, only I'm not gonna chain my 15, I'm just gonna go straight across. So I'm gonna finish out the border and then I will meet you back here to show you exactly how I will attach the button. And remember, the button is optional. If you don't want to add the button or you don't have the button, then you're just gonna single crochet straight across without adding that extra strap, okay? So I'm gonna finish that out. I'll meet you back here with my button and show you how we're gonna attach the button. Okay, so I have completed the single crocheting around the strap on both sides. Now, your band should probably look something like this. And what we're gonna do is really just give it a really nice tug and it'll lay flat. What the single crochet edging is doing, other than making it look nice and clean, it's helping it to not have that big stretch when you have weight inside of your bag. Okay? All right, so now what we're gonna do is on the opposite side of where our chain is, we're gonna flip that over. This is the button that I'm gonna be using, and I'm gonna attach it right here. Okay, so the last step we have is just to put our button on, and I'm gonna place mine about 3 rows down, and that should be enough for my strap to come, pull underneath it, and be able to hold closed. So I'm gonna thread up my tapestry needle. Come from the back, count 1, 2, 3 down, making sure that I am in the middle. I want to leave some yarn back here so that I can tie it up. So through the other side, really simple. We're just going back and forth a few times to secure it. Now remember, your button is optional, so you don't have to add the button. You can add, really whatever it is that you like to it, or you can just leave it nice and open. Okay, I think that's gonna be enough, and all I'm gonna do is give it a tie back here several times, making sure that it just doesn't come off and it's held really good. And that's it. Snip your ends, and we are all done. So thank you everybody for watching Jolie Knots Crochet. I'm Crystal. Don't forget to look for me on Facebook and Instagram. Join the Jolie Knots Crochet community group on Facebook and show us what you've created. See you next time.